The roar of engines tore through the night air. This race wasn't just about speed, it was about pride, about proving who truly owned the track. Adrenaline pumped harder than the machines around me, my hands gripping the wheel like steel. Pit stop. A quick tire change. Everything looked routine. But minutes later I felt something strange. The car began pulling violently to the left. At first I thought it was the track. But no. This was deliberate. Someone wanted me dead. The wheel tore off. The car spun out, flipping, metal screaming against asphalt. In those seconds I was nothing but a rag doll trapped in a cage of steel. When the chaos stopped I was upside down, pinned and dazed. It took 5 endless minutes before I could even move. The stench of fuel burned my lungs, the heat rising fast. Flames licked at the car. Survival instinct kicked in. I crawled out, dragging myself a few meters away. Just in time, 3 minutes later the car erupted, exploding into a fireball. That's when it hit me. This wasn't an accident. This was an execution attempt. And now I'll find the one who tried to erase me. The explosion still echoed in my ears. I was on my knees, coughing, the smell of burning rubber and gasoline clinging to my clothes. My car was nothing but twisted metal, flames rising high into the night sky. The crowd behind the barriers screamed, phones raised, capturing every second. But I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about the hands that loosened those bolts. About the eyes that watched me crash, hoping I wouldn't crawl out alive. I pressed my palm to the asphalt, feeling the grit and heat. My vision blurred, but through it I could make out the pit crew in the distance. They weren't rushing toward me. They just stood there, watching. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't fate. This wasn't bad luck. This was murder. Sirens wailed. Emergency teams ran past me, shouting orders. They pulled me away from the wreck, forced me onto a stretcher, tried to check my pulse, my ribs, my neck. But I shoved their hands off. "I'm fine," I growled. My voice was hoarse dry. The medic leaned closer. "Sir, you've just survived a..." I said I'm fine. I looked back at the wreckage, at the fire dying down. My car, the machine I trusted more than people, had been sabotaged. And whoever did it thought they'd erase me tonight. They were wrong. As the ambulance doors closed, I whispered to myself, "They'll regret this." The hospital lights buzzed overhead, cold and sterile. White walls, white sheets, white coats. Everything too clean, too calm. Too far away from the fire and chaos that was still burning in my head. I sat on the bed, stitches tight against my skin, ribs aching every time I drew breath. They said I should rest. But rest was impossible when my mind replayed the crash over and over again. A nurse came in, checked the monitor, smiled like I was just another patient. But behind her smile I saw something else. Pity. Maybe even fear. "Visitors aren't allowed right now," she said softly, adjusting the four. "I didn't ask for visitors," I muttered. She hesitated. "Someone was here though. A man. Tall. He didn't leave a name. Just stood outside for a while. Then left." My stomach tightened. Who the hell would come here but not enter? As soon as she left, I reached for my phone. The screen was cracked from the crash, but it still worked. I opened the racing footage, replays, fan videos, live broadcasts. Frame by frame I studied the pit stop. And then I saw it. One mechanic, crouched by the wheel, hands moving too fast. Not tightening. Loosening. I froze the image. Zoomed in. The face was blurred by the helmet, but the gesture, the quick glance over the shoulder, the small smirk, was enough. He knew exactly what he was doing. Rage burned through my veins. I wasn't crazy. This was real. And if that man thought a helmet could hide him forever, he was wrong. I would find him. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Rising star driver nearly dies in fiery crash. The reporters called it a tragic accident. They showed slow-motion replays of my car flipping through the air, the fireball lighting up the night sky. To the world it was drama. To me it was war. But I noticed something the cameras didn't. A shadow in the pit crew, someone who shouldn't have been there. I replayed the footage again and again, freezing the frame. A man wearing a cap pulled low, not on my team's roster. His hands on my car. I didn't know his name. But I knew what he did. I spent the next days in silence, my body healing but my mind sharper than ever. I checked the pit logs, asked around. Everyone brushed me off. "Accidents happen," they said. But no. This wasn't an accident. This was a message. And messages can be answered. The first step of revenge isn't rage. It's patience. So I waited. And I watched. Days turned into weeks. My burns healed, my ribs stopped aching, but the anger inside me never cooled. I started digging. Not just into the race footage but into the finances behind the competition. Racing isn't just speed and glory, it's money, sponsorships, and power. And when there's power, there's greed. I traced the team rosters, the ownerships of rival garages, the betting odds that skyrocketed against me the night before my crash. Someone knew I wouldn't finish that race. Someone profited from my near death. Then I found him. Victor Kane. A rival driver, older, desperate to hold on to fame. His team was broke, his sponsors were leaving, his career fading. But if I was out of the picture, he'd rise again. And there, in the footage, was his mechanic, the man with the cap, the one who touched my car. The puzzle clicked together. I remember staring at Victor's face in an interview. Him smiling, saying how tragic my accident was. I saw it in his eyes. He thought he had won. But he had only started a war. I began shadowing him. Late nights in the city, expensive restaurants, secret meetings with men who looked more like mobsters than mechanics. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became. Victor wasn't just a racer. He was tied to people who played dirty, fixing bets, laundering money, silencing rivals. And I was just his latest attempt at silence. But I wasn't gone. And now I wasn't just a racer anymore. I was a man with nothing to lose. I didn't go to him right away. No, that would have been too easy. Too expected. Instead, I waited. The city had its way of showing people's true colors after dark. Neon lights, smoky bars, whispers in alleyways. That's where I found Victor Kane one night, celebrating another win, his arm draped around a girl half his age, laughter spilling out of him like he'd never had a care in the world. I stood in the shadows watching. My fists clenched. My ribs still ached from the crash, but I used the pain as fuel. I followed him after the club. He stumbled toward his car, flanked by two of his men, big, broad, loyal. I waited until they turned a corner into a quiet street. That's when I made my move. Nice night for a drive, isn't it, Victor? He froze. His bodyguards spun around, hands reaching inside their jackets. I stepped out of the dark, my phone in my hand, its screen glowing. I pressed play. The video rolled, the mechanic loosening my wheel bolts in the pit stop, clear as day. The sound of metal on metal. The betrayal captured forever. Victor's eyes went wide. His cocky grin vanished. You should have stayed dead, he growled. Funny, I said, my voice steady. That's exactly what you're going to wish, when I'm done with you. The tension cracked like lightning. His men lunged, but I was ready. Months of anger, months of preparing. I wasn't the same broken man who crawled from the fire. This was the beginning. The first strike. And I swore to myself, I wouldn't stop until Victor Kane and everyone tied to him paid in full. The first bodyguard came at me fast, his fist swinging wide. Amateur. I ducked low, my shoulder driving into his ribs, using his own weight to throw him against the wall. He grunted, the air leaving his lungs in one sharp gasp. The second wasn't so careless. He pulled a knife. The blade glinted under the streetlight as he slashed toward my stomach. I jumped back, the steel barely missing me, grazing my jacket. Victor stood behind them, watching, smirking now that blood was in the air. You're out of your league, he said coldly. I ignored him. My focus was on the knife. The man lunged again. This time I caught his wrist, twisted hard, and slammed his arm against the hood of Victor's car. The knife clattered to the pavement. I didn't hesitate, I brought my knee up, catching him square in the jaw. He dropped, unconscious. The first guard was back on his feet, angrier, clumsier. His punches were wild now. I blocked, countered, then drove my elbow into his temple. He crumpled like paper. Silence filled the street except for Victor's sharp breathing. His confidence was cracking. He glanced at the fallen men, then back at me. You think this proves anything? He spat. I own this city. You're just one man. I stepped closer, the glow of the phone still between us. The video played on loop, the mechanic loosening the wheel, sealing Victor's fate. One man's enough, I whispered. For the first time I saw fear in his eyes. Just a flicker, but it was there. He got into his car and slammed the door, tires screeching as he sped away into the night. I didn't chase him. Not yet. This wasn't about one fight. This was about war. And wars are one step by step. The next morning I sat in a cheap motel room, the smell of mold clinging to the walls. Sleep hadn't come. Every time I closed my eyes I saw the fire, felt the spin of the car, heard the laughter of those who thought I wouldn't walk away alive. I opened my laptop. Hours of searching, digging through forums, private contacts, and whispers in the underground finally gave me threads to pull. Victor's network wasn't just a racing crew. It was a front. Drugs. Weapons. Laundering money through the very races that made him a legend. But I wasn't going to the police. They wouldn't help. Not when Victor had half the department in his pocket. I needed something stronger. I needed proof. So I went back to the garage where it all started. Night cloaked the building, a single bulb flickering above the door. My pulse quickened as I picked the lock, slid inside and let the darkness swallow me. Tools hung on the walls, the floor slick with oil stains. And there in the far corner was the car bay. I searched the benches, the shelves, until I found it. A camera. Hidden. Small. Nearly invisible. I plugged it into my laptop right there. The footage was grainy, but it was enough. I saw the mechanic, Victor's man, tampering with my wheel. Then, clear as day, Victor himself walking in, nodding, smiling, shaking the mechanic's hand. That was the moment I knew I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to destroy him. I copied the footage, pocketed the camera, and slipped back into the night. But as I turned the corner, headlights blinded me. A black SUV roared down the alley, brakes screeching as doors swung open. 3 men jumped out, guns drawn. "Boss says you've lived too long," one sneered. My grip tightened around the laptop case. Adrenaline hit like fire in my veins. If they wanted a hunt, they'd get one. Bullets sparked off the brick walls as I dove behind a dumpster, clutching the laptop like it was my lifeline. The air reeked of gunpowder and burnt rubber. My mind was a storm, but one thought cut through it all. I couldn't die here. Not yet. I grabbed a broken pipe from the ground and hurled it at the nearest thug. The clang distracted him just long enough for me to rush forward, slam him against the SUV, and wrestle the gun from his grip. A shot rang out. He dropped. The others froze for a split second. That was all I needed. I fired back, forcing them to scatter, then sprinted down the alley, weaving through shadows. My heart pounded, my chest burned, but I didn't stop. By the time I reached the train yard, I was bleeding, bruised, but alive. I hid inside a freight car until dawn, clutching the footage like a holy relic. Weeks turned into months. I didn't just run anymore. I planned. I studied Victor's empire, his men, his routes. Piece by piece I tore him apart. One garage mysteriously burned down. A money shipment vanished. A trusted lieutenant was found hanging in his own apartment. Fear spread through Victor's crew. Whispers of a ghost, a shadow that struck from nowhere. And then came the night I'd been waiting for. Victor's mansion loomed at the edge of the city, all glass and steel, glowing like a palace. I slipped in through the service tunnels, silent, focused. The footage from that hidden garage camera was already uploaded, streaming across the web. By the time Victor realized what was happening, his empire would be ashes. I found him in his study, staring at his phone, face pale. "You," he hissed, reaching for a drawer. Too slow. I leveled the gun at him, my voice steady, cold. "You tried to kill me. You took everything I had. Now it's my turn." He tried to talk his way out, but I didn't listen. His words were poison, excuses, lies. I pulled the trigger. The blast echoed through the mansion. Victor slumped in his chair, lifeless. I walked out into the night, the city skyline burning in the distance as police sirens wailed. Victor's empire was collapsing in real time, the footage spreading everywhere. News, social media, forums. For the world, it was the end of a kingpin. For me, it was the end of a nightmare. But as the cool night air hit my face, I realized something. Revenge didn't heal. It didn't bring back what I lost. But it did balance the scales. And sometimes, that's all a man has left. The streets of London were cold, damp, and endless. I walked without destination, my mind boiling. If Victor was only the front, then the real enemies were hidden deeper, pulling strings from shadows. I couldn't strike blindly. I needed names. I started small. The underworld always talks: bartenders, dealers, street racers. Money and fear loosen tongues. Within days, I learned about a group called the Syndicate. They weren't just criminals. They were businessmen, politicians, investors who used crime as a tool. Victor had been their face in Europe. One name kept repeating: Marcus Kane. A billionaire philanthropist, smiling on magazine covers, shaking hands with mayors. But beneath the gloss, he was Syndicate's spine. If I wanted revenge, Marcus was my path. I couldn't walk into his mansion and pull the trigger. Security was iron. Cameras everywhere. Guards trained like soldiers. So I hunted someone weaker: Elliot, his accountant. Every empire bleeds through money. I tailed him, cornered him in a parking garage. The look in his eyes when he saw my gun told me everything. He knew who I was. "You won't survive this," he whispered. "Neither will you," I answered. He gave me ledgers, offshore accounts, proof that Marcus laundered billions through fake charities. Enough to ruin him publicly, But I didn't want headlines. I wanted his blood. I used the papers to infiltrate his world. I posed as a disgruntled investor with blackmail. His assistant brought me in one rainy night, thinking Marcus could bribe me silent. The mansion was golden, marble halls and chandeliers that could feed starving cities. Marcus himself sat in a leather chair, wine in hand, smiling like a king. "You've made a mistake coming here," he said calmly. "No," I whispered, stepping closer. "The mistake was trying to kill me." I dropped Elliot's documents on the table. His smile faltered. His guards reached for weapons, but I was faster. 2 shots, 2 bodies fell. Marcus stumbled back, panic crawling into his perfect mask. "Do you know what you're doing?" he shouted. "Yes," I said, raising my gun. Balancing the scales. The shot echoed through the marble. His blood painted the golden walls. But cutting off Marcus didn't kill the syndicate. Like a hydra, more heads appeared. Within hours of his death, my face was on every underground bounty list. They wanted me silenced, for good. Killers came after me. Russians in black vans. Italians with knives. Silent professionals in hotel corridors. Each time I survived. Each time I left bodies behind. And with every fight I collected information. Names. Locations. I realized the syndicate wasn't just London. It spread across continents, New York, Dubai, Hong Kong. I wasn't fighting men. I was fighting an empire. Months passed. My body was scarred, my soul hollow. But finally I tracked them to their core. A secret meeting in New York, hidden under the guise of a charity gala. All of them would be there. The true architects of my attempted murder. I prepared like never before. New identity. New weapons. A plan not to survive but to end it. The night of the gala, I walked in dressed like them, mask of wealth on my face. Music played, champagne flowed. Laughter of men who thought they were untouchable filled the hall. Then the lights went out. When they came back, I stood on the stage, gun in hand, projector behind me showing their crimes, their killings, their faces. "You tried to bury me," I said into the microphone, voice steady. "But you forgot, I'm a seed." Panic. Screams. Shots fired. But I was faster. One by one they fell, their empire collapsing in a storm of bullets and truth. By dawn, New York burned with scandal. The syndicate was shattered. Some dead, some arrested, others fleeing like rats. I disappeared into the crowd, leaving the city with a final thought. Revenge hadn't given me peace. My scars remained. My family was still gone. But I had leveled the field. I had taken from them what they took from me: power, certainty, control. And sometimes, that's enough. I walked into the sunrise, nameless, faceless, but alive.